The Great Hall of the Galactic War Council had never seen such fear before. Commander Dexcar stood 8 feet tall, his 4 powerful arms crossed over his chest plate. His kind, the Krillians, had won every battle they had ever fought. Their thick shells could stop laser fire. Their claws could tear through metal. But today, even Dexcar felt something he had not felt in 200 years of war. He felt afraid. Around the massive circular table sat the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Each one represented a fighting force that had never known defeat. Until now. To his left sat Master Zenthak of the Zentari Battle Monks. The tall, blue-skinned alien's large eyes glowed softly as his mind touched the thoughts of others in the room. His people could see the future in battle. They knew what an enemy would do before the enemy knew it themselves. Their meditation techniques made them calm in any fight. They had trained for 1,000 years to reach perfect peace in war. Across from him, General Korvex of the Gorvek Heavy Assault Corps shifted his massive form. His people were made of living rock and metal. Bullets bounced off their skin like raindrops. They could lift tanks with their bare hands. They felt no pain and knew no fear. They were the perfect soldiers for any battle that needed raw power. In the shadows stood Captain Velra of the Shadow Dancers. Her people were made of pure energy. They could walk through walls like ghosts. They could become invisible at will. They moved faster than light itself. They were the perfect killers, striking without warning and vanishing before anyone knew they were there. These 4 forces had protected the galaxy for centuries. They were legends. Children across 1,000 worlds told stories of their victories. But now they sat in silence, staring at the holographic display that showed their greatest failure. The Void Swarm had come from beyond their dimension. These creatures were like nothing anyone had seen before. They ate entire planets. They turned stars into black holes. They could not be reasoned with. They could not be scared away. They only knew how to destroy. The first battle had been a disaster. The Krillian shock troopers had charged the enemy lines with their usual confidence. Their shells had cracked like eggs under strange energy weapons. Half their force had been lost in the first hour. The Zentari battle monks had tried to read the minds of the Void Swarm. Instead, the alien thoughts had driven many of them insane. Those who survived spoke of minds filled with endless hunger and darkness beyond understanding. The Gorvek Heavy Assault Corps had lasted longer. Their rock-hard bodies had taken more punishment. But even they had been overwhelmed when the enemy had simply ignored their attacks and swarmed over them like angry insects. The Shadow Dancers had tried their stealth tactics. They had discovered that the Void Swarm could see through all their tricks. Worse, the creatures seemed to exist in many dimensions at once. There was nowhere to hide from them. "We need new tactics," Dexcar said, his voice rumbling through the hall. "Everything we know about war has failed us." "The old ways are not working," agreed Master Zendak. His mental voice reached everyone in the room. "We must find a new path, or all will be lost." General Korvex slammed his rocky fist on the table. "We are the strongest warriors in the galaxy. There must be a way to fight them." "Strength alone is not enough," whispered Captain Velra from the shadows. "We need something different. Something we have never tried before." Dexcar looked around the room at his fellow commanders. They had fought side by side for decades. They trusted each other with their lives. But now they were out of ideas. Every battle plan they made seemed weak compared to the enemy they faced. A small datapad on the table caught his attention. It was marked with the seal of the Galactic Survey Corps. These were the scientists who explored new worlds and cataloged new species. Dexcar picked it up with one of his 4 hands. "What is this?" he asked. An aide stepped forward nervously. "Sir, it is a report on a newly discovered species. We thought it might interest you." "A new species?" General Corvex laughed, but there was no humor in it. What could some primitive aliens teach us about war? Dexcar began to read the report. His eyes grew wide with surprise. The others watched as their commander's expression changed from curiosity to confusion to amazement. "This cannot be right," he muttered. "What does it say?" asked Master Zenthak. Dexcar looked up from the datapad. "It is about a species called humans. They live on a planet they call Earth. According to this report, they have been at war with each other for their entire history. Not just occasional conflicts. Constant war. For thousands of years. That is not unusual," said Captain Velra. "Many species fight among themselves." "Yes, but look at this." Dexcar continued reading. "They have no natural armor. No claws or fangs. No telepathic abilities. No energy manipulation. They are physically weak compared to most species we know. They require artificial atmosphere to survive in space. They die easily from things that would barely hurt us." "Then how do they survive constant war?" asked General Corvex. Dexcar kept reading. "The report says they train constantly for war, even when they are at peace. They create artificial conflicts to prepare for real ones. They put themselves through pain and hardship on purpose. They call it military training." "Training through pain?" Master Zenthak's mental voice carried surprise. "That seems inefficient. We train through meditation and mental discipline. We train through sparring with weapons that cannot truly harm us," added General Corvex. "We train through stealth exercises in safe environments," said Captain Velra. Dexcar continued reading. "According to this, humans train as if their lives depend on it, even when they are not in real danger. They push themselves until their bodies break, then heal and push harder. They create scenarios worse than real battle to prepare for actual war." The room fell quiet. The idea seemed strange to all of them. Their people trained to perfect their natural abilities. But humans apparently had no natural abilities to perfect. Instead, they seemed to create abilities through suffering. "There is more," Dexcar said. "The report mentions that human soldiers often perform better under stress than they do in training. When facing real danger, they become more effective, not less." "That is backwards," said General Corvex. "All logical species fight worse when they are afraid or injured. Humans appear to fight better when they are afraid or injured," Dexcar read. "The report calls it adrenaline response and battlefield adaptation." Master Zenthak leaned forward. "What are you thinking, Commander?" Dexcar set down the datapad and looked at each of his fellow warriors. "I am thinking that maybe we need to learn something new. These humans survive constant war with no natural advantages. They have something we do not. Something we might need to defeat the Void Swarm? You want to contact a species of primitives?" General Corvex sounded insulted. "I want to learn from anyone who might help us save the galaxy," Dexcar replied firmly. "Our pride has not served us well against this enemy." The greatest warriors in the galaxy sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Master Zenthak spoke. "When do we leave for Earth?" The shuttle landed on Earth's moon with a soft thud. Through the windows, the alien delegation could see the gray surface stretching toward a blue and white planet in the distance. Commander Dexcar checked his breathing apparatus one more time. His people could survive in many environments, but they still needed their own air mixture. "I still think this is a waste of time," General Corvex grumbled as they prepared to leave the shuttle. His rocky form barely fit through the doorway. "What can these soft creatures possibly teach us?" Master Zenthak said nothing, but his glowing eyes showed his own doubts. He had tried to read human minds from orbit, but their thoughts were chaotic and strange. Not the calm, organized patterns he was used to from civilized species. "Captain." Velra flickered in and out of visibility as her energy form shifted. "The readings I'm getting are confusing," she whispered. Their technology is primitive, but there are massive energy signatures coming from their training facilities. Dexcar led his team out of the shuttle and toward a large dome structure. According to their communications with Earth, this was the Lunar Military Academy. The humans had built it on their moon to train soldiers in low-gravity environments. The entrance was surprisingly small. It had clearly been built for creatures much shorter than the 8-foot Krillians. Dexcar had to duck as they walked through corridors lined with strange symbols and writing. Their language is inefficient, observed Master Zenthak. So many words for simple concepts. Their construction is weak, added General Corvex, running a rocky finger along the metal walls. This would not survive a single blast from our weapons. They were led to a meeting room where a human female waited for them. She was tiny compared to the alien warriors, barely reaching Dexcar's chest even with his head lowered. Her skin was darker than the pale humans in the reports, and thin lines of old scars ran down both her arms. "Welcome to Earth's Lunar Military Academy," she said in a voice that somehow carried authority despite her small size. "I am General Sarah Chun, commanding officer of this facility." The aliens exchanged glances. This fragile creature was supposed to be a military leader? She looked like she would break if General Corvex accidentally touched her. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," Dexcar said formally. "We have come to learn about human military training methods." General Chun smiled, showing white teeth. "Excellent. I have arranged for you to observe our standard military exercises. I think you will find them interesting." "Standard exercises?" General Corvex could not hide his amusement. "What sort of training do you do with such small bodies?" "You will see," Chun replied calmly. "Follow me to the observation deck." She led them through more narrow corridors. Along the way, they passed groups of human soldiers. The aliens were amazed by how weak these creatures looked. They had no natural armor, no claws, no visible weapons. Their skin looked like it would tear easily. Their limbs seemed too thin to be useful in combat. "How do they even lift their weapons?" whispered Captain Volra. "Perhaps they use their minds," suggested Master Zenthak. But when he tried to sense mental energy from the passing humans, he found only determination and something else he could not identify. The observation deck overlooked several large training areas. Through the reinforced glass, they could see hundreds of human soldiers preparing for various exercises. Some were checking equipment that looked primitive compared to alien technology. Others were stretching their bodies in ways that seemed uncomfortable. "What you are about to see," General Chun explained, "represents basic conditioning exercises and routine stress testing for our soldiers. Nothing unusual by our standards. Basic conditioning?" Dexcar was curious despite himself. "Yes," Chun confirmed. "These soldiers have been training for about 6 months. They are still learning the fundamentals." General Corvex laughed. 6 months? Our warriors train for decades to reach basic competency. Different species, different methods, Chun said simply. She pressed a button, and speakers crackled to life. They could hear a human instructor shouting commands to the soldiers below. The aliens did not understand all the words, but the tone was harsh and demanding. "Are they being punished for something?" asked Master Zenthak. "No, this is normal instruction," Chun replied. Human soldiers respond well to aggressive motivation. The first exercise began. The aliens watched as groups of human soldiers started running around a track. At first, it seemed simple enough, but the humans kept running and running. After what would have been a reasonable warm-up for alien warriors, the humans were still running. "How long will they continue?" asked Dexcar. "This group will run for about 2 hours," Chun said casually. 2 hours? General Corvex was amazed. "But they look exhausted already." Indeed, many of the human soldiers were breathing heavily. Sweat poured down their faces. Their movements became less smooth as time went on, but none of them stopped running. Being tired is not an excuse to quit, Chun explained. That is one of the first lessons we teach. After an hour, some of the human soldiers began to stumble. The aliens expected them to drop out of the exercise. Instead, they kept running with unsteady gaits, some helping others who were struggling even more. That one is injured. Captain Velra pointed at a soldier whose leg was clearly causing pain with each step. Yes. She twisted her ankle about 20 minutes ago, Chun confirmed. Why does she not stop for medical treatment? Asked Master Zenthek. Because the exercise is not finished, Chun replied as if this was obvious. The aliens watched in growing confusion. In their cultures, injured warriors received immediate medical attention. It was inefficient to let damage accumulate. But the human with the injured ankle kept running, her face twisted in pain but her pace never slowing. This seems cruel, said Master Zenthak. This seems wasteful, added General Corvex. You are damaging your soldiers for no gain. General Chun turned to look at the massive alien warriors. Tell me, in your cultures, what happens when a soldier is wounded in battle? They withdraw for medical treatment, Lexkar answered immediately. And if withdrawal is not possible, then they fight with reduced effectiveness until help arrives. Chun nodded. Our soldiers learn to fight effectively even when wounded. Pain becomes a teacher, not a master. The running exercise continued. More soldiers showed signs of injury or exhaustion, but none stopped. The aliens began to realize they were witnessing something they had never seen before. These weak creatures were pushing themselves far beyond what seemed physically possible. How do they not collapse? Whispered Captain Velra. Mental conditioning, Chun explained. We train the mind to ignore what the body is telling it. Pain is just information. Exhaustion is just a feeling. Neither one is a reason to quit. When the running finally ended, the aliens expected the humans to rest. Instead, they immediately began the next exercise. Obstacle courses filled with barriers, walls, and challenges that would test even alien warriors. They are already exhausted, protested General Corvex. How can they perform complex tasks? Watch and learn, Chum said with a slight smile. The human soldiers attacked the obstacle course with the same grim determination they had shown while running. They climbed walls that seemed too high for their reach. They crawled under barriers that barely provided clearance. They lifted weights that should have been too heavy for their small frames. And when they fell, they got up and tried again. When they failed an obstacle, they repeated it until they succeeded. When they were too tired to continue, they continued anyway. The aliens stood in complete silence, watching something that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare and warriors. These tiny, fragile creatures were doing things that seemed impossible. Not because they had special abilities, but because they simply refused to accept failure. I do not understand, Master Zenthik finally said. What drives them to endure such punishment? General Chun looked out at her soldiers, who were now moving on to combat exercises despite being exhausted from hours of physical training. They understand something that many species never learn. The enemy will not care if you are tired. The enemy will not care if you are hurt. The enemy will not care if you think you cannot continue. So we teach our soldiers not to care about those things either. The galaxy's mightiest warriors watched in growing amazement as the training continued. These humans were redefining everything they thought they knew about what it meant to be a soldier. The second day of observation began before dawn. General Chun had invited the alien delegation to witness what she called advanced conditioning exercises. The 4 greatest warriors in the galaxy had spent the night discussing what they had seen. None of them could explain how creatures so physically weak could push themselves so hard. Perhaps they used drugs. General Korvax had suggested. Or mental manipulation, Master Zentak had added, but Captain Velra had shaken her energy form head. I scanned them. No artificial enhancements. No chemical aids. Just determination. Now they stood on the observation deck again, watching as hundreds of human soldiers gathered in the pre-dawn darkness. These were not the same soldiers from yesterday. These were the advanced trainees, men and women who had been training for 2 years or more. What you will see today, General Chun explained, is Hell Week. It is the final test before our soldiers graduate to Special Forces. Hell Week? Vexcar translated the term with difficulty. 7 days of continuous training with only 4 hours of sleep total, Chun said matter-of-factly. It tests their mental limits more than their physical ones. The aliens exchanged glances. 4 hours of sleep in 7 days would kill most species they knew. Even Krillians needed at least 6 hours of rest per day to function properly. How many died during this test? Asked Master Zenthek. None, Chun replied. If they die, they were not worthy to be human soldiers. The exercise began with what Chun called surf. Torture. The aliens watched in growing horror as human. Soldiers lay down in freezing ocean water that had been recreated in a special pool. They locked arms with each other and simply endured as artificial waves crashed over them for hours. The water temperature is just above freezing, Chun explained. Cold enough to cause pain, not cold enough to cause permanent damage. What is the purpose? Dexcar asked, his forearms crossed uncomfortably. To teach them that discomfort is temporary, but quitting lasts forever. After 2 hours of this torture, the humans were ordered out of the water. They were blue with cold, shivering violently, but every single one of them stood at attention when commanded. Not one had quit. The next exercise was even more disturbing. The humans were ordered to carry logs weighing several hundred pounds. The logs required 6 soldiers working together to lift. But instead of carrying them efficiently, they were ordered to hold the logs above their heads while running. Within minutes, soldiers began to collapse under the weight. The aliens expected them to give up. Instead, the fallen soldiers struggled back to their feet and rejoined their teams. When one team member fell, the others took his share of the weight. This is inefficient, General Korvax observed. They are causing unnecessary damage to themselves, are they? Chun asked. Watch what happens next. A human soldier fell hard, his leg twisting badly under the log's weight. The sound of bone breaking was clearly audible. The aliens expected medical teams to rush forward. Instead, the soldier used his teammates to pull himself upright, set his own broken bone with a piece of metal from his gear, and limped back to his position under the log. Master Zenthek's glowing eyes went wide. He should be in shock from the pain. He is, Chun confirmed. But he is also a human soldier. Pain is just information to him now. The day continued with increasingly brutal exercises. The humans crawled through mud onto live electrical wires. They climbed walls with their bare hands until their fingers bled. They fought hand-to-hand combat matches while exhausted and injured, but it was the mental exercises that truly silenced the alien observers. The humans were subjected to sensory deprivation chambers, locked in darkness and silence for hours while sleep-deprived and exhausted. They were forced to solve complex problems while instructors screamed abuse at them. They were put through psychological torture that would have broken most civilized species, and they endured it all without breaking. I do not understand, Captain Velra whispered, her energy form flickering with confusion. My people are trained to face through reality itself, but we would never willingly endure such torment. On the 3rd day of Hell Week, something extraordinary happened. The human soldiers had been without real sleep for over 60 hours. They stumbled when they walked. Some fell asleep standing up and were awakened by cold water. They should have been useless as fighting units. Instead, they began to demonstrate abilities that defied explanation. During a navigation exercise, a team of sleep-deprived humans performed better than they had when fresh. When their electronic equipment failed, they used the stars to find their way. When their maps were destroyed, they read the landscape like a book. When their communications broke down, they coordinated through hand signals. They seemed to improvise on the spot. How are they functioning? Master Zenthek asked in amazement. Their minds should be completely dysfunctional. General Chun smiled grimly. This is when we discover who has the warrior spirit and who does not. When everything else fails, the mind takes over. They enter what we call the zone, a state where the body runs on pure will. The aliens watched in stunned silence as exhausted, battered humans performed feats that should have been impossible. A soldier with a dislocated shoulder used it anyway, fighting through pain that would have incapacitated most species. A woman with a fever of 104 degrees led her team through a complex tactical exercise without missing a step. But the moment that truly broke the alien observers came on day 5. A human soldier named Martinez had been struggling for the entire week. He was smaller than most of his teammates, and his body was failing faster than the others. The aliens had been watching him stumble and fall repeatedly, always getting back up, always refusing to quit. On day 5, during a swimming exercise in rough artificial seas, Martinez began to drown. His exhausted body could no longer keep him afloat. Instead of calling for help or signaling surrender, he used his last strength to push a teammate who was also struggling towards safety as Martinez sank beneath the waves. His teammate reached him and pulled him to the surface. But instead of being grateful for the rescue, Martinez immediately turned to help another soldier who was struggling nearby. He nearly died, Dexkar said in amazement, and his first thought was to help someone else. That is what we call esprit de corps, Chun explained. The willingness to sacrifice everything for your teammates. It cannot be taught through lectures or manuals. It can only be forged through shared hardship. By day 6, less than half the original candidates remained in the exercise. But those who continued had been transformed into something the aliens had never seen before. They moved like ghosts, operating on no sleep and pure determination. They communicated through glances and gestures. They fought as one unified organism. They are no longer individuals, observed Captain Velra. No, Chun agreed. They are something more. They are brothers and sisters forged in fire. They will die for each other without question. The final day brought the ultimate test. The remaining humans were given an impossible mission: rescue hostages from a fortified position while outnumbered 10 to 1. Using only minimal equipment, while exhausted and injured, the aliens expected them to fail. The scenario was designed to be unwinnable. It was meant to teach the humans about accepting defeat gracefully. Instead, the humans did something that shocked even their instructors. They attacked, not with weapons or overwhelming force, but with pure, insane courage. They used tactics so unconventional that they bordered on madness. They turned their injuries into advantages, using fake blood to make enemies think they were more wounded than they were. They used their exhaustion as camouflage, moving so slowly that motion sensors ignored them. One team sacrificed themselves as a diversion, while another team achieved the impossible rescue. They succeeded not because they were stronger or smarter than their enemies, but because they simply refused to accept that success was impossible. When the exercise ended, the alien observers sat in complete silence. They had witnessed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare, about courage, and about the nature of strength itself. Finally, Commander Dexkar found his voice. "General Chun," he said slowly, "how many of your candidates broke during this week?" Chun looked out at the exhausted, battered, but triumphant humans below. None, she said simply. If they broke, they were not human soldiers. General Kovacs, whose people were made of living stone, asked the question that was on everyone's mind. How many years does it take to create warriors like this? It does not take years, Chun replied. It takes the willingness to become something more than you were born to be. Some discover that willingness in weeks. Others never find it at all. The galaxy's mightiest warriors realized that they had been thinking about warfare all wrong. Strength was not about natural abilities or technological advantages. It was about the refusal to surrender, no matter what the cost. For the first time in their lives, they understood what it meant to be weak and choose to be strong anyway. The alien delegation sat in the Academy's briefing room, still trying to process what they had witnessed. General Chun had offered them human food and drink, but none of the visitors could focus on such simple things. Their minds were reeling from concepts that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare. I need to understand, Commander Dexkar said finally. My people have natural armor that can stop plasma bolts. We have 4 arms and enhanced strength. We have been bred for war for thousands of generations. But your soldiers, who have none of these advantages, perform feats that even my warriors would struggle with. How is this possible? General Chun leaned back in her chair, studying the massive alien commander. You are asking the wrong question, she said quietly. What do you mean? Asked Master Zenthek. You are focused on what your people have. Natural armor, multiple arms, telepathic abilities, energy forms that can phase through matter. These are all gifts. But gifts make you dependent on them. When you rely on natural advantages, you never learn to push beyond your limits. Captain Velra flickered into visibility. Are you saying that having abilities makes us weaker? Not weaker, Chun corrected. But it makes you incomplete as warriors. Let me ask you something. What happens when a Krelian loses an arm in battle? Dexkar considered the question. They would fight with reduced effectiveness until medical treatment could be provided. And as Zenthari who cannot read enemy minds? Master Zenthik's eyes dimmed. They would be severely handicapped in combat. A Gorvik whose armor is compromised would likely withdraw from battle, General Korvax admitted reluctantly. And a shadow dancer who cannot phase? Captain Velra said nothing, but her energy form flickered uncertainly. Chun nodded. You have all built your military doctrine around advantages that can be taken away. But humans start with nothing. We have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. We are slower than most species, weaker than most species, more fragile than most species. Then how do you survive? Dexkar asked. Because we learned that true strength comes from within, Chun explained. We cannot rely on gifts that might be taken away, so we developed something that cannot be taken. Will. She stood and walked to a wall covered with photographs of human soldiers throughout history. Every human culture developed the same understanding independently. The Spartans of ancient Greece, the samurai of Japan, the Vikings of Northern Europe, the Mongol warriors of Asia, all different peoples, but they all discovered the same truth, which is, prompted Master Zenthek, that the mind is the ultimate weapon, and it can only be forged through suffering. General Korvax shifted his massive, rocky form. That seems inefficient. Why not simply build better weapons or stronger armor? Chun smiled. Because weapons can be destroyed and armor can be penetrated. But a warrior's spirit, properly forged, becomes unbreakable. Let me tell you about our philosophy. She turned to face the alien delegation. First, we teach our soldiers that pain is not their enemy. Every other species I know of tries to avoid pain, minimize it, or eliminate it as quickly as possible. Humans do the opposite. We seek out pain because it teaches us lessons that comfort never can. What lessons? Asked Captain Velra. That our limits are illusions. That what we think will break us usually makes us stronger. That the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is simply the willingness to endure what others will not. Chun pulled up a holographic display showing human training exercises. Watch this carefully. This soldier is carrying a wounded teammate. The injured man weighs 200 pounds. The soldier carrying him weighs 150 pounds. Mathematically, this should be impossible for any significant distance. The aliens watched as the smaller human carried the larger one for miles across rough terrain. But he does it anyway, Chung continued, because he has learned that mathematical calculations do not account for human will. We teach our soldiers that the word impossible is just an opinion, not a fact. But surely there are real limits, protested Master Zenthuk. Of course there are. Humans die. We break. We have physical constraints like any species. But we have learned that most of the limits we think we have are actually just comfort zones. Breaking through comfort zones requires pain, so we make pain our teacher instead of our master. Chun moved to another display showing human soldiers in combat. Second principle, we embrace death instead of fearing it. Most species train to avoid death at all costs. This makes them predictable. They will always choose survival over victory when forced to choose. That seems logical, said General Corvex. Does it? Let me show you something. Chun displayed a historical battle scene. This is from one of our ancient battles. A force of 300 human soldiers faced an army of thousands. They knew they would die. They chose to fight anyway. Not because they thought they could win, but because their deaths would serve a purpose. They committed suicide for no gain, Dexcar observed. Did they? Their sacrifice inspired their countrymen to fight harder. Their example became legend. Their deaths accomplished more than any victory could have. By accepting death, they became immortal. Chun paused to let this sink in. When you remove the fear of death from a warrior's calculations, they become capable of anything. They can make choices that terrify enemies who still cling to life above all else. That is madness, whispered Captain Velra. Is it? Your people have natural advantages, but you are still afraid to lose them. You fight to preserve yourselves. Humans fight to accomplish the mission, regardless of cost to themselves. Which approach makes an enemy more afraid? The aliens sat in uncomfortable silence. Everything Chun was saying challenged their fundamental understanding of military tactics. Third principle, Chun continued, adaptability through adversity. Your people train in controlled environments with predictable scenarios. We deliberately create chaos and uncertainty in our training. She showed them footage of human soldiers training in multiple environments simultaneously. Desert, Arctic, underwater, zero gravity, all while exhausted and under fire. Why? Asked Master Zenthuk. Because real battles are never what you expect them to be. Equipment fails. Plans go wrong. Allies desert you. Enemies do unexpected things. Most species panic when their preparations become useless. Humans have learned to thrive in chaos because we train for it constantly. But how do you prepare for the unexpected? Dexcar asked. By learning that there is always a way forward, even when everything goes wrong. We teach our soldiers to see obstacles as opportunities. When their weapons break, they use rocks. When their communications fail, they use smoke signals. When their supplies run out, they live off the land. Adaptation becomes automatic. Chun brought up a new display showing human soldiers working together. Finally, and most importantly, we understand that individual strength is meaningless. True power comes from unity forged through shared hardship. All military units work together, General Corvex pointed out. Do they? Your Corellian shock troopers fight alongside each other, but each warrior is essentially fighting their own battle. Centauri battle monks coordinate through mental links, but those links can be disrupted. Gorvik heavy assault troops operate as a unit, but remove one piece and the rest continue functioning normally. And humans are different? Watch, Chun said, showing them footage of human soldiers in combat. See how they move? That injured soldier continues fighting not because he can, but because his team needs him to. That woman carrying ammunition to the front line is not following orders. She saw a need and filled it without being told. That man shielding his wounded teammate with his own body is making a choice that will likely get him killed, and he makes it instantly. The aliens studied the footage carefully. What they saw was indeed different from their own military operations. The humans seemed to anticipate each other's needs, to sacrifice for each other without calculation, to function as something greater than the sum of their parts. This is what shared suffering creates, Chun explained. When people endure hell together, they become bonded at a level deeper than conscious thought. They become family. And humans will do anything for family. Even die? Asked Captain Velra. Especially die. Death for family is not sacrifice, it is honor. Commander Dexkar was quiet for a long moment, processing everything he had heard. Finally, he spoke. General Chun, I must ask you something important. My people are facing an enemy we cannot defeat with our current methods. Would you be willing to teach us these human principles? Chun studied the massive alien commander. Are you prepared for what that would require? What do you mean? It means giving up your reliance on natural advantages. It means embracing pain as a teacher. It means accepting that you may die in the process. Most importantly, it means becoming something new. You cannot learn human methods and remain unchanged. The four alien warriors exchanged glances. Everything they had seen suggested that General Chun was right. Their traditional approaches had failed against the Void Swarm. They needed to become something different. We're willing, Dexkar said finally. Chun smiled for the first time since they had met her. Then tomorrow, you begin learning what it means to be human soldiers. 6 months later, Commander Dexkar no longer looked like the same alien who had first arrived at Earth's Lunar Military Academy. His natural shell armor was cracked and scarred from countless training exercises. His forearms bore the marks of rope burns, cuts, and bruises that he had learned to ignore. Most importantly, his eyes held something they had never contained before. The quiet confidence that came from knowing he could endure anything. Beside him, Master Zentag sat in meditation, but not the peaceful meditation of his people. This was combat meditation, learned from human soldiers who had taught him to find calm in the middle of chaos. His mental abilities were stronger than ever, but now they were backed by the knowledge that he could function even if those abilities failed. Him, General Korvax, looked the most changed of all. His rocky form was still massive and powerful, but he moved differently now. He had learned to fight like a human when his strength was not enough, using speed and cunning instead of relying on brute force. The scars on his stone-like skin were proof that he had learned to push beyond what his species thought possible. Captain Velra's energy form flickered with new patterns. She had mastered the art of fighting while exhausted, injured, and cut off from her natural abilities. Human instructors had taught her that true invisibility came not from phasing abilities, but from moving when enemies did not expect it. They stood together on the bridge of a human warship, watching as the Void Swarm approached Earth's solar system. This would be the ultimate test of everything they had learned. All ships report ready, announced Admiral Rodriguez, the human fleet commander. The fleet was a mix of alien vessels and human ships, united under a new tactical doctrine that combined alien technology with human fighting philosophy. Are you nervous? General Chun asked the alien commanders through the communication system. Dexkar considered the question. 6 months ago, he would have responded with anger at the suggestion that a Krillian warrior could feel nervous. Now he understood that acknowledging fear was the first step to overcoming it. "Yes," he said simply, "but fear is just information. It tells us the situation is dangerous. It does not tell us to retreat." The void swarm emerged from dimensional rifts like a dark cloud of hunger and destruction. They moved in patterns that had destroyed every fleet that had faced them before. Traditional military doctrine would have tried to maintain formation, use superior firepower, and protect the flagship. Instead, Admiral Rodriguez gave an order that would have seemed insane to any civilized species. All ships, scatter formation. Engage at will. Remember, we are expendable. Earth is not. What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. The human ships attacked with reckless courage, diving straight into the enemy formation. When their weapons were destroyed, they used their ships as rams. When their life support failed, crews continued fighting in vacuum suits. When all hope seemed lost, they activated self-destruct, systems that take enemies with them. But it was the alien ships that truly amazed everyone watching. Dexcar's Krillian vessel had lost its main weapons in the first exchange of fire. Instead of withdrawing, his crew did something no Krillian unit had ever done before. They continued the attack using backup systems and improvised weapons. When those failed, they rammed enemy vessels while broadcasting messages of defiance. "Master, Xanth's ship found itself cut off from the main fleet." Surrounded by void swarm units that were immune to telepathic scanning. Instead of being helpless, Xanthek and his crew adapted. They used human-taught tactics, reading enemy movements through observation and experience instead of mental powers. They fought with pure intuition when technology failed them. General Korvax proved that even Livingstone could learn new tricks. His massive assault ship was designed for direct confrontation, but he used it like a dancer, striking from unexpected angles and withdrawing before the enemy could respond. He had learned from humans that strength without strategy was just wasted. Energy. Captain Velre's ship demonstrated the ultimate fusion of alien abilities and human philosophy. She phased in and out of reality, but not according to any predictable pattern. She moved like a ghost, guided by human unpredictability, striking where enemies least expected it. The battle raged for 18 hours. Ships on both sides were destroyed in numbers that should have broken any fleet's morale. But something unprecedented happened. Instead of becoming demoralized, the combined fleet grew stronger as the fight continued. Human crews took over alien vessels when their own ships were destroyed. Alien warriors fought hand-to-hand in human ship corridors when boarding actions began. Species that had never worked together were coordinating like they had trained. Together for years. The turning point came when a massive Void Swarm command vessel broke through the fleet's perimeter and headed directly for Earth. Traditional tactics would have required a organized response with heavy ships designed for such encounters. Those ships were either destroyed or too far away. Instead, a small group of damaged vessels, led by Dexcar's crippled cruiser, launched a suicide attack on the command ship. "This is insane," transmitted the Void Swarm entity, speaking in mechanical tones that revealed their confusion. "You cannot succeed. Surrender and preserve your existence." Dexcar's response was broadcast across the entire fleet. "We are human soldiers now. We do not surrender." What followed was the most unlikely victory in galactic military history. The small force of damaged ships, crewed by aliens who had learned to think like humans, accomplished the impossible. They destroyed the command vessel through pure determination, sacrificial tactics, and the kind of cooperative courage that could only be forged through shared hardship. With their command structure broken, the Void Swarm began to retreat. For the first time since their arrival, The interdimensional invaders had been defeated in open battle. In the aftermath, as rescue operations began and casualties were counted, the survivors gathered on Earth's lunar academy. Many were wounded. All were exhausted. But they had won. "We lost 40% of our ships," reported Admiral Rodriguez. "And saved the galaxy," replied General Chun. Vexcar, his shell armor cracked and one arm in a sling, stood before the assembled crowd of mixed-species survivors. "We have learned something today that will change warfare forever," he announced. "Technology is not enough. Natural advantages are not enough. Only the warrior spirit can achieve the impossible." Master Zenthuk, his robes torn and his mental abilities still recovering from the psychic backlash of the battle, added his thoughts. "We came to Earth thinking we were the galaxy's greatest warriors. We were wrong. We were just beings with natural gifts. Today, we became actual warriors." General Korvax, his rocky form bearing new scars from hand-to-hand combat in space, spoke for many when he said, "Human training did not make us stronger. It made us refuse to accept that we could be weak." Captain Velra, her energy form more stable than it had been in decades, flickered into full visibility. "We thought pain was the enemy. Humans taught us that pain is the forge where warriors are made." In the weeks that followed, the victory at Earth became legendary. But more importantly, it became the foundation for a new approach to galactic defense. The human military academy on Luna was expanded into the Galactic Warrior Training Center. Representatives from hundreds of species came to learn human methods. They came expecting to learn new weapons or tactics. Instead, they learned to transform themselves. The training was brutal. Many candidates from civilized species could not complete even basic exercises. But those who persevered discovered abilities they never knew they possessed. They learned that true strength came from the willingness to endure, to adapt, to sacrifice for something greater than themselves. Commander Vexcar, now bearing human-style scars along with his natural shell markings, was appointed as one of the Academy's senior instructors. His specialty became teaching species with natural advantages how to fight effectively when those advantages were removed. "Pain is temporary," he would tell new recruits, quoting human military philosophy. "Quitting lasts forever." Master Zenthak developed new meditation techniques that combine Zenthari mental discipline with human stress conditioning. His students learned to maintain focus even under extreme pressure, to find peace in chaos, and to trust their instincts when technology failed. General Korvax became the instructor for endurance training. His rock-hard physiology allowed him to demonstrate techniques that push students beyond their perceived limits. "Your body will quit," he would tell struggling recruits. "Your mind will quit. But your spirit, properly trained, never quits." Captain Velra taught advanced adaptation courses. Students learned to accomplish missions using broken equipment, incomplete information, and improvised tactics. "Humans taught me that there is always a way," she would explain. "You just have to be willing to find it." Years later, when new threats emerged from unknown regions of space, they were met by fleets crewed with warriors from dozens of species, all trained in human methods. These new warriors combined the natural abilities of their races with the indomitable spirit that humans had, perfected over thousands of years of constant warfare. The galaxy's mightiest warriors had learned the most important lesson in the universe: that might without will is just potential.